Good evening. How are y'all tonight? I thought that, since I haven't done a story time in a while, I thought that I would give story times of when I worked at Papa John's, Chick-fil-A, and a little bit about McDonald's, but all the story about McDonald's. Because I know a lot of y'all have stories about when they probably worked at when they worked at McDonald's, I'm sure. So, let's start off whenever I worked at Papa John's. It was one of my first jobs. Or it was my first job. It wasn't one of my first jobs. It was my first job. Well, at Papa John's, if you've ever worked at Papa John's, you'll know that the oven takes about 5 minutes for the pizza to go through. Halfway through, you gotta open the oven door to not dock the pizza. You do that before you put the pizza in, to poke the holes, the little air bubbles, to make sure that the pizza is nice and flat for your customer. Well, this happened a couple times. Not, I think, but I was making a cheese stick for a regular customer, and I forgot in a cheese stick there are two ingredients: the butter and the cheese. Well, guess what this goofball did? I forgot the butter and the cheese on the cheese stick. When you put just dough in the oven, you know what happens? It swells up like a freaking volcano. So when I opened the oven, the cheese stick got halfway through, and then whenever I opened the oven, I shut it real quick and made a face like, oh no, what did I do? So I'm trying to keep as straight a face as possible because I'm at work and I'm trying to be professional. Said, sir, I am so sorry, but your cheese stick is gonna be another 5 minutes. And he said, oh, why is that? And I said, because I forgot the butter and the cheese, and the cheese stick swelled up like a volcano. The pizza came out. It was this big. The pizzas that I made were about 8 to 10 inches probably. I'm not sure. I'm not very good at measurements. So he starts cracking up laughing. And then I really can't remember the many more Papa John's stories because I wasn't in Papa John's the majority of the time that I worked at Chartwell's. So, let's skip to Chick-fil-A. My first day in Chick-fil-A, I didn't know how to do the waffle fries. I never worked at fryer, so I didn't know that the fries were done. So I thought that it was time to dump them in the fry basket. So I dumped them, and my coworker Dakota said, "Are you stupid?" I said, "No. Why?" He said, "Look at those fries." So I looked at the fries. I said, "Okay, what about them?" He said, "They're not done, you doofus." I said, "Oh." So I scooped all the fries up. They took about 2.5 minutes, and then they were done. That's not the worst of what I've ever done. So the next story that I have about Chick-fil-A is that when I did decide that I was in the window making sandwiches and boxing while my other coworkers were boxing nuggets and fries, and I was making a spicy chicken deluxe. In a spicy chicken deluxe, you have the spicy chicken, the pepper jack, the lettuce, the tomato, and the pickles. Well, I had all the toppings in the sandwich. And then I handed the lady her food. 5 or 10 minutes later, she comes back and says, ma'am? I said, yes, ma'am. How can I help you? She said, you forgot something. And I said, oh, what's that? And then she opens the box, lifts the top bun, and I forgot the chicken. I worked at Chick-fil-A. How in the world do you forget the chicken at a chicken restaurant? Honestly. Honestly. That's not even the worst part. The worst thing that happened. I really liked the nuggets, and one day I was really hungry, and they made me go on break super early, and I admit I was sneaking some nuggets. I don't care anymore. It's been it's been 7 years since I've worked at, or 8 years this month that I've worked at the university. So, or Chartwell, sorry. So I don't care if anybody comments or whatever. That's not the worst thing that happened. But while I was sneaking those nuggets, I didn't realize that the pickle bucket I was sitting on was open. So the pickle bucket ended up falling over, and the whole restaurant was flooded by pickle juice. Of course, I got written up. That wasn't the first time that I flooded Chick-fil-A. The second time I flooded Chick-fil-A was when I was trying to go mop Papa John's, and the floor machine, it was either the floor machine or the mop bucket, I can't remember. But the floor machine ended up getting knocked over and spilled. And that's the second time I flooded Chick-fil-A. The third time I flooded Chick-fil-A was when we were getting ready to close for the summer. Because because Chartwell's and Compass Group is at universities across the nation. And I thought that I would be helpful by filtering the French fries. Well, at that Chick-fil-A, they didn't really get filtered that often. Or at all. The 2 years that I worked there, I don't think I ever saw them get filtered. So I decided to filter them, and all of a sudden I see grease all over the place. We had just closed. Everything was done. All we had to do was mop. Oh my gosh. I don't think I ever saw that boss ever get so angry. What else happened at Chick-fil-A? Oh, this is something that cracks me up every time I think about it. I can't remember if it was me or my best friend that, so I call her Southern Drawl Sissy to respect her privacy. Well, she decided to, or not she decided, she buttered buns every morning for us so that we could do our business. Well, we opened at 10:30. We opened Chick-fil-A at 10:30. All the buns were done. And I needed a tray of buns so that we could open and start making sandwiches and then start boxing nuggets and fries. Well, when I took that set of buns off, a tray of buns off the bun table, guess what happened? That's right. All 25 or 30 trays got spilled. And I have 35 seconds, so I will tell y'all what happened next in the next video.